Good folks, if you could take your seats, please, we're going to start. This is Ron Poidomani, and he has a brand new thing that's maybe 5 minutes old. That's how long he's been working on it, till about 3 this morning. Here's Ron.
Okay, so that's better. So the only section that actually survived was the street running section and then one harbor section. So that became what is known as the manufacturer's railroad. So that was a standalone railroad for a while, and I was just messing around with building that. And then I came across the Huntington and Hartford. Does anybody remember the Huntington and Hartford? Okay, some have. So it was a railroad that belonged to Bob Collett, and unfortunately Bob passed in 2020, but prior to that he started selling off parts of the layout and actually mostly buildings. So fast forward to 2021, I had to go pick up a building for another modeler that he purchased. And just before I even get into that, this is what it used to look like way back when. And it was a New Haven themed layout that was based out of Hartford and included Waterbury and a couple other sections, but it also included Huntington. And that was the Center Peninsula. And that was a cool scene over the Center Peninsula there. It had its own logging line, and yes, there was a grizzly bear in there. And its own logging camp as well. So behind the logging camp was the actual helix that was on the layout. So back in 21, I went to pick up that structure, and this is how I found it. This was left of it. And I did previous presentations on how I moved the layout and all this other stuff, but I wanted to make this more of a prototype, how I use the prototype to design what I'm building. So I started the process of taking this down, and it was, I don't recommend it, put it that way. It's not a pleasant experience. A lot of the plaster cracked and it didn't even survive, especially that section there. Once you start pulling on that stuff, it just starts cracking, and unfortunately that's all that was left of it. So I ended up taking the helix in 2 pieces. It was just a disaster. And I didn't even think it was going to survive the move. You know, it's sad to see something like this go. But if I didn't buy this layout, it would have ended up in a dumpster somewhere. So I had to save it. I actually took certain sections I had to cut and just take in a lot of different pieces. So tomorrow, I will be having an open house, believe it or not. You're not going to see this, but I will have an open house tomorrow, but please be aware, it is a construction zone, all right? So I put a lot of work into it, but the former Huntington and Hartford, this is what it looks like now in my basement. So I rebuilt it, repurposed it, switched a lot of stuff around. I actually took the backdrops and switched them to one side. I stretched one side of the layout down. I condensed the Center Peninsula, but essentially I have 2 layouts in my basement now. I have the manufacturers all over to the right, and I have the actual main layout to the left. So let's talk. Yes? The manufacturers is the one that's in New Haven. When you go over to Q on the right-hand side, all that area there. So, yeah, I had 2 layouts. And yeah, my wife found that out too about last year, and she came downstairs and saw that and said, oh, look at this. You took half my basement. All right, so let's go over some of the characteristics of this layout. So it's set back in 1948 to 1968 to New Haven Railroad to include the manufacturers. The main layout features 5 yards. What I ended up doing is this layout had a helix, and it had a Waterbury hidden staging, and it had one area that was open. So what I did was I wanted to have continuous running, so I raised the layout. I actually raised it a foot to make it a true double-decker. It's like a hybrid type of double-decker. So the Maybrook yard is underneath what was Hartford, which is now New Haven, which I'll explain. So I have 2 yards, and I have an inbound track and outbound track of the Maybrook. Now that's going to be pretty much hidden staging. Waterbury yard is going to be hidden staging, but there will be an area that you can actually see. This layout will also feature Bay Ridge car floats. I have found a spot for that. We have Lower Bridgeport yard, and then a really small version of Cedar Hill. The manufacturer's railroad has Collett Yard, which is basically, it's a real yard, but it's just a fictional name. And then we also have Bell Dock Yard on the manufacturers. So basically, the 2 main areas I wanted to model was Bridgeport and New Haven. I always wanted to model Bridgeport as a kid. And both areas have smaller sections. So when we're on the main layout, Bridgeport has Seaview Avenue, which is part of the Center Peninsula, and Housatonic Avenue. And in future videos, you'll see what I'm doing with that, but there's going to be street running down there. And also with New Haven, you're going to have the manufacturer's railroad, which is accessed via Mill River Junction, and the way it was back in the day with New Haven. Now, they have an old bridge down to Mill River Junction that connected either the north or the south. I just don't know which one it was. But I simulated that bridge on the layout as well, which I'll show you. Like I said, the Bay Ridge car float is down there. Both layouts feature engine facilities. Cedar Hill, there's a roundhouse. Thank you, Pete. Lamberton Street shops. What's that? No, but I took it all in one piece, so I saved it. We have the Lower Bridge. I'm sorry, where am I? Roundhouse. There we go. Lamberton Street shops. We have the Lower Bridgeport yard and the manufacturer's Collett yard. Both layouts feature harbor scenes. I have Bridgeport Harbor, Mill River, Quinnipiac, and New Haven Harbor as well. I love harbor scenes with boats. If you put boats with rails next to old buildings, I'm in. So why do I model the New Haven? You know, most of the time, there's like a rule out there that if people normally model what they grew up with, right? Is that the rule? I guess I got to break the rule. I guess if I wasn't modeling New Haven, I probably should be modeling Conrail or something. But I was at a train show, and I was walking at Springfield actually, and I was walking around with my dad, and he pointed out a model. He says, "Oh, Grandpa used to drive for them." I said, "What do you mean?" So I found out through accident that my grandfather worked for New Haven. So he drove New England transportation trucks. So once I found that, I says, I have to model New Haven now. So I had the New Haven bug. So let's just go over what the layout is comprised of. And we're going to start with New Haven. And I'm going to show you the areas that I'm modeling. Now, some of the areas are not prototypical, not even close. But I tried to get the feel of where it is. So if you notice on does this have a laser pointer? Yes, it does. If you notice here, a sign says Hartford. Eventually I'm going to change that to New Haven. And this was one of the original steam locomotives that ran on the Huntington and Hartford. This is a brass locomotive. And actually, this actually ran on the first inaugural run when I opened the layout back up. There's a station in the back that was on the Huntington and Hartford. That's going to be New Haven. It doesn't look like New Haven, it looks like more like Hartford, but we're gonna call it New Haven. I'm gonna change the signs and everything else. The layout is actually a double track main. I kept it that way. But I wanted to include prototype scenes such as the engine storage, motor storage down in New Haven. So I try to simulate it the best I could. I still have quite a bit of work to do. There's another shot of two, you got a passenger and then a freight. So this is Cedar Hill Engine and Car Shops. This is from Pete's layout. I was able to pick up a diorama from Pete and slowly and carefully remove the homosote from the base. And I was able to do it without breaking anything. So now what I'm going to do is just trace this out, cut this, and drop it right into place. And it's already pre-wired, so which is a good thing. So a lot of these are the original structures that were on the layout, and some aren't. And also, you're going to see a lot of work from other modelers on here. There's a lot of work from other modelers on here from layouts that are no longer. So I'm going to show you that as well. But this is basically the overview. I have this section here actually lifts out, and this is the access port, and I actually fit through it, so I lucked out. This here is brand new. This came off another layout, and that's going to be our car shops for passenger. And this shop here is going to be basically for freight service on the rolling stock.
Isn't that turntable kind of small?
Well, yes and no. It had the bigger turntables, but that was the size turntable that came out. If I had to turn anything bigger, I do have a Y at Mill River. I can turn an engine if I had to. So there's a drone view of what it looked like before I put the other roundhouse in. If you notice, it's a double track main, and it comes around and then loops on this top. Now this is where the helix is now, and I actually put an extension on the back here, so we'll look at that in a second. What's that? This here is 26 feet long. If you add the manufacturers, it's 40 feet by 13 feet, roughly. What's that? 30, I want to say 32 and 30, something like that. Did you have a question? Okay. Yes.
Just ended up starting some photos from the library. In Cedar Hill, they had a warehouse, shop office, wheelchair, and an area around the house. And I don't know whether they're going to be available, but we did like that, you know, it wasn't a shop building, maybe a good fit in that space.
Oh, cool. Awesome. There's photos of that? There's photos?
I don't have them, I'm in the photo library.
Oh, okay.
You go through all the zillion photos, and try and sort them and put them in whatever you request Adam.
Oh, okay.
And then switch them down to
Okay. Awesome. Here's another shot of the roundhouse. This actually came off another friend's layout, John Elwood, and eventually I'm going to cut this down and make this all city area. Still got quite a bit of work to do. During the first run, we had our first meet, so had to capture that on video and a picture. So in this photo here, this area here, this is what is going to be Cedar Hill. Over here is Lamberton Street Shops. You have, and now I lost train of thought. This is Housatonic Avenue. This is Seaview Avenue. I got turned around there for a second. And then you can see the car float here, but I'll show you some more pictures of that in just a second. So I had to figure out how to take the two-track main and loop it around. So I had bridges from the old the old layout, so I reuse those. I still have to cut all this stuff out. But there's an area out in New Haven, New Rochelle, that always intrigued me, especially going into the city and stuff. So this is kind of what I wanted to do, but it's not really prototypical at all, but it fits for the scene. There's the original roundhouse. That's an old Magnuson kit. Is it hot in here, or is it me? Okay. Okay, so here comes Bridgeport. Now, definitely one of my favorite areas to model, and I was looking to make the 4-track main, or the illusion of the 4-track main on Jenkins Curve, and I was able to do that using a 2-track main, if that makes sense to you. So of course, when I was making this, prior to I was making this, I was laying the track one night, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get out my catenary bridges, and I'm going to get out my EP5s and start having a little fun. So I should have been doing other things, but I started adding things of what it would look like. Now, somebody's probably going to ask, why are you using a 3-track bridge and on a 4-track main? Because I have a kid in college. And there it is. So, and I want to keep a happy wife at home. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some poles off to the side, and these did actually exist in Bridgeport next to the ramp track, so it is prototypical. But I do have, originally I bought a whole bunch of these already built from Model Memories for the old layout. I worked a lot of overtime to pay for those, so I figure I'm not going to go back and start ordering more. So that's pretty much it on that picture. So I always had a fondness for Bridgeport, and you know, when you go down there and you look at the elevated track, and it's just a cool area that I always wanted to model the elevated portion. Another thing that I was able to figure out is the skewed bridge. Now the skewed bridge is still there, and these are pictures from 1955 when they had the wreck. So I was able to take this picture and lay it against the layout next to Jenkins Curve, and this is the area where I'm going to put the skewed bridge in. Now for the bridge itself, I'm going to use the Atlas girder bridges, and then somehow I'm going to snake a track through here. And I will have Jenkins valves in the background as well. So again, this is a present day photo, but when you have a harbor and ships and trains and factories and stuff, it just makes a really cool area to model. Another thing that I'm putting on my lower Bridgeport yard is there's a little substation there, and here's another picture of the wreck that happened. So I already have this is already cut out and ready to go. This is going to be out of Monster Model Works cinder blocks. I zoomed in on that picture, and that's a cinder block building. I'm going to scratch build this substation. I got enough parts to do that, and that's going to be right in front. And when I show you some pictures, you'll see I'll have the whole Bridgeport Harbor right here as well. My version of Bridgeport Yard, I had to make some sacrifices on my lower Bridgeport Yard. It's not as wide, but it's a little bit longer in length. So I'll be able to put 3 tracks down there, and that's pretty much it. But I just didn't want to clutter up the area with more and more track. It just was not going to look good at all. So again, we have another picture. This was taken when Harbor Yard was still there. It's just a really cool area to model again. This building here, PJ Murphy's. Now, this wasn't PJ Murphy's back in New Haven days. If you zoom in on some of the pictures, they had more of a round sign. So I'm going to try to figure that out. If not, I already have this building cut and ready to go. I'm making this out of mat board, and I already had it all laser cut. So this building will exist on the layout as well. The next thing I'm going to put on the layout as part of Housatonic Avenue or alongside of it is the iconic gas tank that was down in Bridgeport. It's no longer there, but I intend to build something to that effect. Housatonic Avenue is going to be another area off of Bridgeport. Now, I spoke to somebody who used to live down there years ago, and he would describe how the cars would come in, and there was team tracks everywhere. And my father worked for Bridgeport Machines, so he actually remembered when the trains actually used to come down the street, big trains. It was pretty neat. But there's a lot of history, a lot of local history available in Bridgeport if you go down there and look. Now, I used to work down in Bridgeport on North Ave, so I was always used to rail fan after work or sometimes before work if I go in just to check things out. But if you zoom in, Bridgeport brass is still very much there, which is neat. And then also, if you've been driving on the Route 25 connector to get on 25, I'm sure you've seen this structure as well. Yep. This coal facility used to take in at least 30 to 40 cars a week of coal. And they would shove them down, and they had from what I understand, the actual rigging is still here if we used to bring up the coal, but they used to bring the cars in, and it would be like a pulley system to pull the cars through and empty them. So they had a pulley system inside this area that would drag the whole section of cars down. So, of course, my rendition of that is going to be the Golden Flame. I just plopped it there just for now. So the other side of that is Seaview Avenue. Seaview Avenue had a lot of switching, street running. Seaview Avenue was electrified, so they had a lot of the EY2s and EY2Bs. They came from the what was that? Okay. They had the electric switchers. When the manufacturers shut the power off in 47, they sent them up to Seaview Avenue to work because they still had the trolley poles there. So Seaview Avenue, there is one section there is one structure actually that I'm going to be building soon. It's probably going to be my biggest venture ever to build. It's definitely going to be a challenge, but I plan on building this to scale. The shot tower. This is one of those buildings that, I'm building the Remington plant or part of it or my rendition of it, but if you're going to build a Remington, you have to have the shot tower. So that's going to be made out of all basswood. I have all the brick sheets. So you'll see that's slated to be done in 2026. So I'll be driving that to the NMRA in Tennessee in the car because I can't fit on a plane. So I told my wife we're driving it. She's all right. So I like to go down the east end of Bridgeport and check things out. There's still a lot of history down there. It looks like nature's trying to reclaim it though, which is cool. But this building is still very much there.
I think they're actually stabilizing it.
Yeah, it's a National Historic Site now, or a landmark or something, so it's not going to get torn down, which is good. But a friend of mine gave me the pictures of what it looked like inside, and I'm going to put the bottom half is going to be all lit up with a machine shop and everything. Somebody trespassed there and videoed it on YouTube, so I know what it looks like inside, so I'm good. So this was the back end of the layout, and this is going to be part of Remington. Behind there, you'll see it in another picture, is the old logging line. That's going to be Remington Woods, or my little rendition of Remington Woods, where they bring the ammo and stuff like that. This will have its own switcher, and actually the switcher is still around. It's up on the Housatonic property right now. So the original Remington switcher is up in Canaan, Connecticut. All right, so I have about 300 slides left and only about 30 minutes, so we're going to move it along. I don't have that many left. I do have a lot left, but not that many. All right, so Manufacturers Railroad. So when I was looking online, trying to figure out the Manufacturers Railroad, I figured out Google was very cool to see. And if you look at the old maps, the New Haven accessed the manufacturers from two areas. And this is the main, obviously, and here's Mill River Junction. Now, there is a bridge there. If you look on Google Maps, there is a bridge. And then if you look closely, over to the right in this picture, if you go to Google Maps and look at it, if you really zoom in, you can see the tracks from the yard are still there. Last time I checked, it wasn't that long ago. So that is pretty cool to see that the yard is still around. But I needed to get trains from the main layout to the manufacturers, and I had an alleyway with a door that led to my crew lounge, so I had to figure out how I was going to do it. So in the old layout, I had a lift bridge that crossed in front of a doorway. I said, well, if I did it in the old house, I could do it in the new house. So I saved the bridge, so now trains can come across from the main layout over into the manufacturers. The biggest train that runs on the manufacturers is 5 cars. So we're not talking huge trains going through there. And there's a train. Don't look at the mess on the bench. It's not. It's just one of those things. So, but I was pretty excited to see trains running across the bridge finally. So another picture, another iconic picture that you'll see is the old Saab building down in the manufacturers, the Haven Terminal. And obviously I wanted to have something like this on the layout as well. Geographically, the manufacturers is wrong. So go easy on me when you see it tomorrow. But I got something similar to there. I found this kit and I'm gonna redo this building, and that's gonna be my New Haven Terminal building. If you haven't switched this out yet, I know some people, Dave, you switched it out. You have to think how to switch it out. You can't do a traditional switch on it. You really have to, it makes you think. Because you also have an industry here, and you have an industry here, and I always put both in the op session, so you have to really figure out how you're gonna do it. The other building that I'm putting on the layout on the manufacturers is New Haven Wood. And I'm using an old AHM building for that. That's right there. And I decided to put a little mini scene, New Haven, Connecticut, car right there. What's that? That's a good question. I'll have to look it up and see where that was. It was in Shoreliner. What's that?
They said it's manufactured on River Road,
River Road?
which is the one that runs right along the shore.
Okay.
Actually, the river, Quinnipiac, maybe.
Okay. Well, if it's on the Quinnipiac, this area here, this harbor area here is the Quinnipiac, so close. So another cool area that I saw in Shoreliner was Chapel Street. And I looked at some of the old maps and I figured out this is the old PPG building, Pittsburgh Plate Glass. So, what's that? So this is my version of it. It's pretty close. Then you have Bell Dock, prototype versus picture. And this is when I originally was starting the layout here. It says, no, this is not even painted, and this is definitely an older picture. I'm also scratch building something very similar to the Bell Dock yard office. So I already have, I'll probably do that in the night. But that is just a nice, easy square building. Foscale Models makes these chimneys with the vents that come up through the top. And I'm just using a regular standard walls with Tichy windows. Another cool area is the west end of Bell Dock. You see the Army tank cars down here. There is, I think, an S1 switcher underneath the bridge, and there's a oil company right here. In my version of that is that. This building here came off of John Elwood's layout, and a lot of buildings that you'll see on the layout came off of Ira Pollock's layout, who was a New Haven model railroader as well.
The oil company, it used to be Wyatt took hold of oil. WYACT.
So the next section that I'm going to be having on the layout, obviously, is Waterbury Yard. Now, Waterbury Yard was part of the original Huntington and Hartford. This was one of the pictures I took during an op session when I was over at Bob's a long time ago. I think this was back in 2009. I took this photo. And fast forward to 21, this is how I found it. It's just like abandoned. So I redid it, put all new lights in there, ripped out all the old spikes, and put new track in. I added more lights, so now it's back in service again. And the original, one of the original locomotives painted by Bob is now in use on the manufacturers. And if you notice in the back, all the hidden staging, this is before I put the fascia up, all the hidden staging is all lit. So be able to look and see where your train is as well. And it has all access points and whatnot. Another part of Waterbury Yard is going to be Anaconda Brass. And this is one of those buildings I meant to go down there all these years and take a picture of it, I never did, and guess what? They tore it down. So I missed out on that one. Yeah. You got it? Okay.
I think also one of the copper mills ended up in the U.S. The survey they do for historic buildings. I don't remember if it was Anaconda, but it was one of the Waterbury brass mills.
Okay, cool.
Might be dated there. Yeah.
So what I did is I took there's going to be a section of the Waterbury Yard that is going to be visible from the outside of the layout. So you'll actually be able to go in there and switch out. All the switches will be accessible on a hand thrown. So this is going to be one of the, this is actually in Waterbury Yard. HO. So I'm using maps to help me as far as the Bridgeport Yard goes, the lower Bridgeport Yard. And this is one of the maps that somebody gave to me. So I started looking at it, and it's very helpful as far as how many tracks were down there. And then when you start putting the maps together, it shows a bigger picture. I tried to include a roundhouse, but it just wasn't happening. So I had to scrap that idea. And there's another picture of the actual yard. And then also, I like to look at the historical photos to see what type of structures are down there. So here's another picture of one of the wrecks, 55, and you can see the substation. You got Jenkins curve, Jenkins valves, and this is exactly what the front of my layout will look like. Hopefully without trains on the ground, but. So some of the aspects of the prototype of the lower Bridgeport Yard. Local businesses, there's a meat business down there, coal for the power plant, Bridgeport Brass, freight houses. Switchers also went down to the west, State Street, and they did Bullard's. Bullard's was a machine shop, I believe. And then also off track 3. There was also a 2-car move on track 3 for Jenkins valves, so somehow, some way, I'm going to work in Jenkins valves as well as a switching point. The lower yard had a yard office along with a yard master. So I have the yard office already built. I just got to, when someone comes over, they'll be the yard master, I guess. So let's look at Bay Ridge, New York. So I always wanted to put the car floats on, and I was thinking about the Bronx because I'm a Yankee fan, and talked to my in-laws, and they're like, no, you got to put Brooklyn on there because we're from Brooklyn. I said, all right, I'll put Bay Ridge. So that's how Bay Ridge happened on my layouts, my in-laws. Present day. Now I do have Bay Ridge Yard on the layout, but you can't see it because it's hidden right now. It's actually underneath the Center Peninsula. So that's what it looks like, believe it or not. It will be scenic. You will be able to see it. I'm going to have holes cut out in the fascia so you'll be able to look in and see the trains coming in and out. Because you have to go in there and grab your cars for the car float. So I set up a scene, what it's going to look like with a backdrop up and So that's actually Bay Ridge Yard. And it's amazing, you just put a building up, put a backtrack up, and then you have a scene so quickly. There's the car float, obviously. I will have a track here for the idler cars. I will have a track for a locomotive, and then you can see Waterbury in the background, but this will have a whole fascia piece going up as well. So you won't be able to see any of that. There's another section there. Okay. Signature scenes. So what I've noticed, especially with New Haven railroaders, or New Haven model railroaders, is that every model railroader that I've known that has a New Haven layout has a signature scene on their layout. So you walk down and you see something that grabs you. So, and what I'm showing you these because I took something from every one of these modelers I'm about to show you to create what I have at home. So, first one, I'm sure you probably know this layout. This is Rick Aberson's layout. Devon. Obviously, this is his signature scene. Rick actually worked in that tower. So it's a perfect. So happens when I was moving in 2018, I get a call. Ricky called me up. He says, "You're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you." I was like, "What?" "I'm moving and the layout's coming down." I said, "Well, guess what? So am I. And my layout's coming down." So we were actually moving at the same time, and we did not help each other with our layouts because we were just so busy moving them. But when he moved his layout, he stretched it to include Devon Draw as part of his signature scene. So a great example of a New Haven layout that's out there if you haven't seen it. Another one, and I believe he's going to be on open house tomorrow as well, is Derby Junction. And this is John Grosner. Another example of very prototype layout, very accurate Derby Junction. And then the last one, I'm sure you all know what this one's going to be, but Old Saybrook. So when I first saw this layout, it really struck me because when you're actually walking down, this is my first time at Chris's house, when you walk down, he has the music playing from the era. So you're walking down, you're hearing the music, and then you're signing a logbook, and it's almost like you're walking through a time machine and actually being there. And talking about realism, and I really appreciated that, of that feeling that I got when I went there. And this phenomenal modeling as far as accurate, I mean, right to the T. So, and I do appreciate that. So my signature scene, obviously, is going to be Lower Bridgeport Harbor and Jenkins Curve and all the other jazz. So someday this will be something cool to look at, but it's brand new, it's fresh out of the box, and I still have to do a lot of work to it. But I intend to put a cool harbor scene in there. I do have a freight house, and if you notice this freight house, if you look at Doug Foskale's site, that is the prototype structure he gave me off of his layout. So, but Bridgeport had a freight house very similar to this, almost exact. So that's the REA freight house right in the lower yard, like there was one, Jenkins Curve, and then there's the power plant. There's a recent New Haven book that came out, the recent one. It's the first time I've ever seen a picture of a switcher switching out the UI plant from the main. He actually was dragging out a cut of cars. Another section there. Okay, really quick, layout operations. When I started operating the manufacturers, I was using switch lists. And I found they tend to be very cumbersome of putting them together. So I started looking at different things as far as how I was going to operate the layout. This picture is out of order, but this book was very helpful and instrumental in looking at the resources. But I'm using timetables, and I'm also using freight symbol books to develop an operating scheme. One of the things that I did is I switched over to car cards. And I had my first obsession with car cards, and believe it or not, it actually went well, and the guys that never operated before enjoyed using car carts for some reason. So we're going to try it out and keep it going for a while. Well, I'm going to show this to you earlier. In addition to car cars, I'm going to be putting in switch lists again, but these are going to be the industry switch lists for something that if the car has to be at a certain door or against a bumping block or something like that, then the operators will know what to do with that. The other thing I learned, actually I learned this from Chris, right before I operated on his layout, he sent me an email and it was all a bunch of instructions on his layout, all about his layout. So I said, wow, that's great. So I decided to do it for mine. So I have general information on my layout for the crews, and I actually emailed this to the crews before they come over. I have a job description of every job that goes on the layout, what it does. I actually have a job train symbols. If I wanted to operate the entire layout, I have developed a sequence for it, a whole cycle. I put an industry index showing how many cars can fit in each industry, so if you're switching it out. One of the things I learned from John Grossner was having maps of the area. So I have maps for my operators, so if they're coming over to look at it, they know what track is what. And then also, I include a plan of the actual prototype of what it looked like for real. So I found that these have been very helpful, and I kind of know when someone comes over, they don't read their paperwork because they screw everything up. So, but those have been very helpful. So I'm just going to wrap up with a few layout photos that I have recently. And this is happening at night when I'm just ready to go upstairs for the night. I said, oh, this is a cool scene, so I take a picture of it. So this is an area over on the industrial section, and eventually this is going to be a hot rod shop. There's all the 55s are there. Midnight Auto Parts. This is River Street. It used to be Seaview Avenue on my old layout, but now it's River Street. This building here is actually, I've been making it 3D, but it's actually a paper picture. And I'm going to make it 3D. I'm going to put some fire escapes on it. But this is the DuPont building. This building serves three purposes. It's a structure, it's an industry, it's a corner building, and it's also a tunnel. And it goes to the other side. So there's only three sections of this building. It's just the front of it. And it just adds a nice touch to it. Back in New Haven, there's the beer company. That came off of Ira Pollock's layout. I thought it was a nice addition to the layout. It is big, but I did have some space I can put it. This is down in New Haven, a work car just sitting. Yep. There you go. There's the work train going through New Haven, and then you have the car shops on the side. That's going to be for passenger fleet. Some of the original structures that came off the Huntington and Hartford actually went back in their original spot. And a good example of that is this Chippy Howell building here. And that's the main with a freight and obviously a work train. And here's a good shot of the back of the layout. This is Remington Woods right here. So the trains are going to come off the main and go through here, and also it'll be able to access through this way too. So this is going to be a pretty big complex when I get done with it. And that's the other side of the layout. Another cool picture. This is down in Bell Dock. This next picture, this was a modeled after a actual New Haven steam tank engine. A friend of mine did the DCC, and I had my friend Rick do the decaling on it for me. So, and that is a good runner. That thing runs so sweet. I'll turn the it has a capacitor in it. I turn the layout off, and for a couple minutes later, that thing is still going. And then, of course, my newest member of the locomotive fleet is the 44-tonner from Rapido. That, I took it out of the box, and I was supposed to be doing other things, and I played with that for about 2 hours. So I was like, oh, man. But great, great runner. So what I did, when I ran the first train, is I called up a friend of mine and I said, we have to get Bob's wife down to the layout. Because I wanted Bob's wife to run the first train on the layout when I finally put the layout back in service. So what we did is I had a whole bunch of friends over. Jackie came over. I presented her with a Huntington and Hartford sign. She signed it. We put it on the layout, and she ran the first train on the layout since it came down at her house back in '21. So it was nice. And it was funny. When I was walking her to the car, she goes, "You know, Bob never let me run his trains." It's like, well, guess what? So I do have a YouTube channel, New Haven Rails. I do a lot of layout updates and videos and Railfan videos and everything else. So, but if you have any questions on this presentation, you can send me an email to newhavenrails@gmail.com. I answer pretty much every email that comes through. Any questions?
You got 10 minutes.
Not bad, huh?
Not bad.
Any questions?
Did John Elway tear down his layout?
Yes.
Oh, my God, that's beautiful.
Yep, John Elwood tore down his layout.
Oh.
Yep, he did the Pacific Northwest. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
No problem.